Hi everyone, welcome to MOQdigital's Win with the Power Platform for Local Government webinar. I'm Molly, the Marketing Coordinator here at MOQdigital. I will be your moderator today, so if you hear my voice pop in from time to time, that will be why. Today I have with me MOQdigital's CTO, Piers Matthews, Microsoft's Business Application Solution Specialist for Local Government, James Mather, and Microsoft's Local Government Account Manager, Sean Keating. They will be facilitating today's webinar. We want to encourage interaction and collaboration in today's event, so please feel free to use the Q&A section to ask questions or to get in contact. All right, and we'll begin. Over to you, Piers.
Thank you very much, Molly. So very glad to be joined here by our two colleagues at Microsoft, James and Sean, who can give a bit of an introduction to what we're here to talk about today. And then I'm going to crack on, hopefully, with a full deep dive of the platform, as well as some exciting demos to show you really what we can build. Over to you, guys.
Perfect. Thank you, Piers. Good afternoon, everyone. Firstly, thanks so much for finding time in your day to join us for this second round of webinars that we've partnered with MOQdigital across how Microsoft's Power Platform is really helping empower councils and local government entities to do more with less. My name is James Mather, and my role here at Microsoft sits within our business application segment. I support 130 or so councils nationwide, really helping them essentially drive closer engagement with their community to reduce the cost to serve, as well as bringing some of those innovative ideas to really meet that change in expectations that we see in local gov. Now, the first round of webinars that we did with MOQ, good few months back now, was a great success with many councils really taking up that offer of that app in a day workshop with MOQ team, to really help understand how you can, for example, automate a manual or inefficient process, to get people out of Excel, which is commonly used for the wrong purpose. Think about use cases. It could be things like a paper form that you're looking to digitalize. It could be that you've got field staff out and about on the road that can't access back-end corporate information. Other ideas that we see, think around use cases, for example, QR codes on the side of bins, for example, that might have been defaced. You know, as you can hear, there's really a wide range of use cases that we can help council with. In a time and day and age that we're in today, where budgets are tighter than ever, many councils that I'm speaking with are really looking to bring some of those application development skills in-house. With our Power Platform being low to no code, this is proving really appealing to councils where little to no development experience is required. Now, one of our council friends over in Victoria, City of Ballarat, have really brought that sentiment to life. Retnan, ICT manager at Ballarat, quoted that if you can use Excel and PowerPoint, you can make a Power App. I should note that some of the Power Platform features and functionality we'll show today are already available within your office investments with Microsoft. And so perhaps we can catch up after the session to see how you can get started on the Power Platform journey. We've got a great session ahead. Do please try and stick around until the end. Piers is going to be running through some awesome demos as to how you can really bring the platform to life with some different use case demos. I'll hand over to Sean firstly, and Sean, over to you.
Yeah, thanks, Jimmy, and great overview for what we're about to see today. Look, I'm really looking forward to this session and this demo, following on from our previous webinar we did. So look, I guess the reason for this webinar is I'm Microsoft Local Gov account exec, and I'm just hearing a lot of noise out there around the Power Platform. So I think this is a really good opportunity for us to showcase what can be done in the Power Platform. And the reason why we've partnered with MOQ is they're a Microsoft Gold partner, and they're actually the market leaders within local gov in this area. They're doing some great work with some of my local government councils, and yeah, just I want to actually share what they're doing with other local government councils with everyone. So I'm super excited to sit back and watch Piers' demos, and also look, I'm really interested to hear about those offers that you mentioned, Jimmy, that a lot of local government councils took up after the last webinar. So yep, thanks for that, and over to you, Piers.
Awesome, thank you very much, guys. So hi everyone. Yep, my name is Piers Matthews, CTO of MOQdigital. So really what we're talking about today is Power Platform unlocking end-to-end solutions in the public sector and how we may be able to do that with the technology. So when we look at the Power Platform, really what we're talking about is enabling digital transformation in the public sector. And the areas that we typically focus on with the Power Platform are areas where we're looking at process automation, specifically workflow and digitalization of manual work is one of the key opportunities. So with recent things that have happened globally, with COVID and even before that, we see now more than ever local government needs to obviously look to reduce the cost of service delivery. We're trying to improve efficiencies by automation everywhere, not just in one place. And we're certainly trying to enable remote work and custom use cases where maybe those customers can't necessarily come into the office anymore, or the staff aren't always coming into the office. So as the work environment starts to change, we need to make sure we have solutions that support that. What we know is that technology is the key enabler for this transformation, but high speed and low cost are the drivers. So we can't be spending a huge amount of money to really simplify a basic process. It should be something we can get off the ranks quite quickly and into our users' hands and into our customers' hands. What we know is that our customers need quick win, low code solutions that empower users to build their own, empower IT to build their own, automate and simplify, and more importantly, fit the process. It's not about taking a box solution that's pre-built that has a static process. It's actually about building that solution and that workflow around your specific process that lives inside of your council. What we need to be able to do with these solutions is obviously deploy them easily, and they should just work without hassle in our environment. So really, it's about driving that kind of thing. When we look at why Microsoft, well, we should first have a look at what the leaders or what the analysts are saying. So what we know is that Microsoft is considered by both Forrester Wave as well as the Magic Quadrant of Gartner as a leader in this space. So certainly seen as a leader in terms of the low-code development platforms, as well as a leader in enterprise low-code application platforms. So Microsoft is very well positioned with their Power Platform in combination with the rest of the Microsoft ecosystem in order to provide these low-code type solutions into the customer base. So one of the things we have to ask ourselves when we think about the Power Platform, where is it appropriate? What does it actually do? What are the business problems it wants to solve? So Jimmy summarized it quite nicely up front. Really, the way we look at the Power Platform is where you can see it's going to add value is if you find a solution where you've got paper forms. So where some of your business processes today may be driven by paper forms, there's an approval process that gets written down on paper and goes from desk to desk before it actually gets actioned into a back-end system. That's a good use case. Sometimes those paper forms aren't actually paper though. So if you think about an Excel document that gets emailed around or gets put into a SharePoint site and it gets emailed around, there's a link from there. This is a potential use case for how we could start to think about using some automation on the Power Platform. So common paper or common forms replacement is a great use case. Common data visualization. So this is about data that comes out of your operational systems, but also as you start to automate some of those processes in those forms, you start to say, hang on, I'm now starting to automate that process. I can actually visualize the data that's captured in that process because it's no longer on a static paper form, but even more importantly, I can actually visualize the performance of the process itself. I know how long each step in that process takes, so I can use data visualization to potentially help me improve that or to find areas for improvement in my environment. Obviously, common workflow needs. When you think about common workflow needs, this isn't just the human-to-human workflow. So Bob fills an expense claim, and then it goes to Sally for approval, and then it goes to the finance person for final processing. That's just a standard human workflow, but also even system orchestration. So sometimes what we want to do is, as part of that workflow, is to reach into a system and pull some data out or to put some data into that target system. And lastly, embedded smarts. So one of the things we can do with the Power Platform is things that typically only humans can do. We can start with the AI and some of the capabilities Microsoft has provided us to actually do that automatically in the platform itself. Things like the ability to automatically recognize text on a form or to recognize sentiment of a customer and make a decision in our workflow one way or the other. Some example use cases, if you think about field workers going out and doing an inspection, a Power App form is a great way to do this, right? It's a great way we can have them on their mobile device or embedded inside of Teams, being able to complete that order process. Something like a visitor check-in. So someone coming into the office or into an environment and need to check in or scan in or identify themselves as part of that access request process. HR forms. So very commonly we find when customers don't have big, large-scale HR platforms, they may have some basic HR processes that they would like to enable through the Power Platform, and it's certainly suitable for that. And lastly, what about your customers? So the ability to have your customers or your citizens be able to log on to your public portal and actually to register a request for service. I would like someone to help me understand how I can get my development application approved, by way of example. So these are some examples of what you could build in the Power Platform. Another example may be a new starter. So one of the common things that happens with joiners, movers, leavers is a whole bunch of activities need to happen. And not all of that data is typically managed in an HR system. Some of it may be, for example, the provisioning of IT assets. How do we make sure that Piers gets the right laptop for his role when he joins? How do we make sure that that order is actually placed? How do we capture his CV and store it in a place so that immediately later we can make sure we go ahead and get that? And that's something that can be enabled, again, through the Power Platform, as sort of automation of that very often manual process in your environments. So when we think about the Power Platform, largely, it's made up of these components. I always think about the Power Platform as being data, the ability to visualize and analyze data, apps, the ability to have a presentation layer where I can capture information, automation, the ability for anything that I've done to be automated and flowed and workflowed, and then smarts. That's where that really smart, intelligent bit adds on and starts to take over some of the work that maybe humans, that mundane, repetitive tasks that we can get the system to do for us. The technology stack that we have available to us to allow us to do that. Firstly, Power BI, he provides the data analytics and visualization process. I'm sure many of you have heard of Power BI in the past. Power Apps, this is the human interface, the user interface where data is captured, forms are presented, and people interact with the application. Power Automate, that's that workflow engine, which does two things. It has that human workflow as well as that system integration workflow. Power Virtual Agents, this is part of that smarts. This is when we decide, hang on, I don't want my application or my solutions interface to only be a form. I actually want to create a bot. And I want that bot to live inside of Teams or on my Facebook page or in my public citizen portal. So a citizen can then interact with the bot and request service and create a ticket or some process that needs to happen. Underneath all of that is what really powers the guts of the Power Platform. So firstly, we have Dataverse, previously known as Common Data Service. This is essentially a common data model behind these Power Apps and these Power Automate type solutions and the Power BI solutions that allow us to use a singular data model to build multiple applications on top of that cater for all of our different scenarios. Data connectors are really important. They allow us to connect into these other systems. We have 300 plus of these things to retrieve and to put data. And lastly, AI Builder, this is really smart. This is the guy, which I'll show you a little bit later, that allows us to build up an AI model for a specific use case to essentially remove some mundane work that may be part of that human process. So in a nutshell, that's what the Power Platform is and what it can do for us. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to go into some workflows for you guys and do some demonstrations of how the platform fits together. Alrighty, so hopefully everyone can see my screen. So the first thing we're going to talk about is this idea of a customer portal. So one of the things we notice in public sector is customers need to interact and they need to work. And one of the things we may want to do is we may want to automate a process. So the process we have chosen to show you how it could work is the concept of a pre-DA meeting. So what that means is sometimes in some councils we've noticed that there's this concept of a development application, and sometimes what the person who's doing the development wants to do is they want to present what they're thinking of doing to a planner or someone at council who's then able to vet that and help them understand the process that they may need to go through. So how do we go about building out that? So the first thing I'm going to show you in the Power Platform for this is this concept of that common data service. So first, one of the things we want to do is model out what that data may look like. Now, the common data service allows us to model out our full data set, but it's more than just a data model. So here you can see this is my pre-DA meeting inside of my common data service. I'm busy looking at the data and the tables. Not only does it allow me to model data in all different types of data, it also allows me to model the relationships of this data to other data in my system. And importantly, I can even go and put business rules on. And this is one of the key differentiators of your common data service versus just a standard database. I can actually build in specific business rules and activate or deactivate those business rules inside of my common data model to make sure that they're consistently applied. I have views, which is a way for me to filter that data and then display it in my applications. I have forms. Forms really represent what that application may look like if I represent it out in a form. I have dashboards, charts, keys, and data. Now, if I look at the data, for example, the data shows me, if I've got that set up, the physical data that's inside of my database. And I can actually go and have a look about what I've captured already in terms of these pre-DA applications. The other thing, very fine control permission structures we have inside of this. So that's really, I just want to give you a bit of a feel of what the back end of this may look like in terms of a data model where we can actually store this meeting application for pre-DA. Now we can look at two interfaces. The first interface is an interface that a citizen may have. So what we have over here is a component called a Power Apps portal. So a Power Apps portal is meant to be an external facing public website where your customers or your citizens can sign up for access and then they can interact with you. So here I've created a very simple little portal. I've just randomly called it East Coast Council. And what it's doing is I've just created a home landing page. My graphics, I'm not the best graphics person, so you'll get the idea. So what we've got over here is essentially just saying, this is your one-stop shop for all our council services. This is a list of some of the services that we can provide for you. Now, one of the things that we have is I can actually sign in or sign up for access to this portal as a citizen. I've already done that. I can have an invitation if I wanted to. If I wanted this portal to be a portal between myself and another government entity or another organization, I can even link it to Azure AD. In this case, Brian has already redeemed his invitation and he's joined in that portal. So I'm just going to go ahead and sign in as Brian. I'm now signed in as Brian Johnson, as you can see at the top there. One of the reasons Power Apps portal is actually so powerful is if we think about it, people have profiles. And what I mean by that is our citizens will have to set themselves up or can set themselves up as a profile, which means many of these application forms and processes that we typically fill in, we very often are writing our details again and again and again. By setting up your profile once, it means that data is modeled in that common data service, and I can reuse that on many of the application forms or processes I may want to make available to my citizens. So I've clicked on my profile. This is the information that's available, and I've set it up for myself. Over there, I can then use that profile to go request a specific service. So I could see a list of council services. I've only created one, which is the pre-DA meetings. I could get it from there, or I could, for example, on this link on the homepage, just go launch into a pre-DA meeting. And what I can see is any of these meetings that I've previously set up. Maybe I'm a developer and I've set up a couple of these meetings before in the past, or I can choose to go and create myself a new pre-development application meeting. So I'm going to click on the create button, and it's going to pop up a window for me to allow me to do that. One of the things I need to do is to choose what type of pre-DA meeting am I after, and it displays me what the council cost is for that. So the one I'm going to go for over here is this one. This is the first meeting for this property over here. I'm going to go ahead and select that, and that's the type of meeting. And then I need to provide information about the property that I want to develop in order to apply for this meeting. So this really comes off a real form that was used in one of the councils that we modeled out. So I'm going to go put this information in. I'm going to say number 8, and maybe I'm going to say Longer Street, and the suburb I'm going to say, let's say Upper Kedron, 4055, and the lot number, let's say the number 157, for example, is the lot number. And how big is it in square meters? Let's say it's 950 square meters. And then the description, what is it that I'm doing here? So I'm going to say a residential development of a single home, maybe, for example. Item to be discussed. I want to apply for a reduction in setback distance from road, and I want to just understand how this could be processed, for example. So I just want to understand. So this is really my request. I want a pre-DA meeting with a planner at the council, and I've gone and put this application in, and I'm hopefully expecting to be granted that meeting so I can come and discuss this particular point over here. So I'll go ahead and I click submit. And what that's done in the back end is it's gone and submitted that. Where has it gone? Obviously, that data has then gone and been loaded into the pre-DA meeting data over here. And then from that point, I can kick off workflows. So that's what a front end may look like for a customer or an external facing portal. One of the things we want to do is also think about the back end people. but before the back-end people being the office workers. But before we do that, let's have a look at what the designer or the editor looks like for that. When we talk about low code, hopefully this gives us a view of what that may look like. This is what that portal looks like in the designer or the builder mode, where you actually get to go and design up what your public facing portal component looks like, as well as all the forms that make that portal up. So as you can see, it's really what you see is what you get type editor over here. And on the right over here, I've got the opportunity to change themes. I've got the ability to define my own themes. I've got the ability to define new pages. I've got the ability to accept to go and modify. I can also have pre-built templates that my organization or my department may have set up for me over here. So the one I'm going to go and have a look at is the new pre-DA meeting over there. So what this does is this loads up that page where I actually, that pop-up page where I went and captured the pre-DA meeting. And what's interesting over here, this is what the page looks like. We'll notice that it's speaking about having a form that's been embedded. Now this form was modeled directly on top of that data model. So if I select on that and I click edit form, I can actually go and modify what data in that data model the form actually presents on the screen for me. So I'll click on edit that and show you what that view looks like quickly. Right, so this is what that form looks like. What we'll notice over here, a couple of key important facets over here. Any one of the fields I have over here, I can go and set specific business rules. I can have events fire off when certain data is changed. I could do a whole bunch of stuff around formatting on that specific form. And as soon as I've made those changes and publish it, that becomes available then on that public web as the updated version of that form. We'll also notice all the fields that we've defined in the data model, and I can choose to add any field I want to related to the PDA meeting application directly onto this form. So for example, I could go and add assessor's remarks, and I could go add that field onto the form if I wanted to, and then it becomes part of the form that's then actually displayed on the public portal. So this is really that kind of what you see is what you get type editor. I don't have to write any code. I can modify this, build up my application templates and my portals and my form templates for visibility and accessibility for the citizen who's working outside. The question is now that I've submitted that, I've shown you what the editor view of that looks like, what happens in the back end? What do my back office staff get access to? So my back office staff get a view that looks like this. This is what we call a modal power application. It's an application model directly on top of the data model for a specific purpose. I'm calling this my citizen portal mobile application, and its job is to provide my back office workers or my call center workers the ability to field any of those incoming requests that are coming from the portal or elsewhere. So I can see over here, for example, I've got Citizen Portal. I've got a little graph that we put over here that shows me all the applications that have currently been processed. I've also got a view of a timeline of any of the communications that I specifically have been involved in the solution as a whole, where I've sent information out to citizens or received responses back from those citizens. I've got that timeline over there. I'm just going to go ahead and refresh the page, and what we should see is that under here, under unprocessed applications, this was the application that I just filled in online as Brian Johnson that's now come in for review and approval. So I picked that application up. I can go ahead and work with that and get the information that was submitted online on that public sector portal for myself. So I go in here and I see all the application details. And what's really interesting is all this information over here about Brian Johnson. Again, Brian Johnson didn't have to capture that information because he's got his profile set up. It's in the common data service that automatically gets added to the form and added to the information. So I'm able to then go ahead and read that and know everything about that applicant without him having to fill all the data in again and again. I can then see the information that's specific to the form. I can see the property details, all the data that was captured, as well as items to discuss. Now that I've read that information, part of my business process is I need to review and approve that I'm happy with this. So I can say this is a this is a valid request, and I can then choose to go mark this as I'm approving this request. As soon as I approve it, because I'm approving it, my business rule says, hey, you're approving it. You need to actually go and set up an appointment time for yourself and for this person who's applied for the application when you're going to go ahead and see when you're going to offer an appointment to them. So I'm going to offer the appointment for next week, Tuesday, and I'm going to say I want that appointment, let's say at 10 a.m. Once I've done that, I go ahead and I click save. What that's now done is that's gone and saved that record, and it's fired off some workflows. So the workflows it's busy firing off in the background is one, to the creation of that appointment. And the second thing it's doing is it's going to be sending out an email back to Brian Johnston to tell him, hey, we've processed your application, it's been approved. So if we go under appointments and emails, we should see that those two things have been set up. So there the appointment has been set up for Piers Matthews, as well as the email that when sent back to Brian Johnston telling him that his request for that pre-DA meeting or that service has been effectively approved. So I can go ahead and open that and I can see that email, and this was the content that was sent through with the date and time of when that meeting is, as well as making sure that he understands what the meeting fee he's expected to pay is. So that's really simple solution that really just hopefully gets across how you could use the Power Platform to model out that sort of citizen interaction scenario using Power Portals, as well as using a modal application and our common data service in the middle with some Power Automate flows, really just tying all of that workflow together. So that's an example of that. So that's the first set of examples I wanted to give you guys. I'm just going to close those demos up now and then get into the next one that we have. Alrighty. So the next thing we may want to look at is other types of applications. So one of the beauties of the Power Platform is the Power Platform allows us to respond to changing conditions quite quickly and very rapidly spin up an application to solve a particular challenge. So one of the challenges that MOQdigital had, and we provided this app, by the way, for free to all our customers, was this idea that said, when COVID happened, we were starting to get quite concerned about our staff having to work from home, and we wanted to be able to do or automate really the process of doing a daily check-in or a weekly check-in with that staff to make sure they're okay. So our people and culture people approached us and we said, this is the Power Platform, go ahead and build it. And most of this application I'm about to share was actually built by our head of our people and culture and launched on our environment, and then we provided it out to our customers. So this is the idea of a check-in app, a home check-in app, where someone can actually go and check in and check that they're okay. So something that we didn't have, and in a couple of days we had it spun up and available. So when I log into that application, as soon as I click on that link, it shows me welcome Piers. This is not my real face. I've done obviously a bit of a mock-up face over there. Welcome Piers, check-in. The definition of a check-in in this particular case is to let everyone know that you're particularly okay at this time. So now that this application has been loaded, and you'll also notice, by the way, this application works really well on a mobile application because Power Platform allows us to deploy these applications into the Power App mobile device. So I go into this application and I can do a quick check-in. How are you doing? I'm doing well. How is your family? They are okay. Is there anything you need help with? Yes, I can say home education was tough. Help next time would be appreciated. And it was tough. Where are you working from this week? Let's say this week I'm working from the home office, and I click on next. Any other comments or suggestions, I can go ahead and click submit. That application is then submitted into the system, and obviously workflows and so forth kick off. So really quick application, built out a simple scenario in response to something that was happening on the floor in our environment. The team was able to build that out and get that out into market really quickly. So one of the things that happens with that check-in application is, if you think about it, we may need to alert our people and culture team if someone's responded in a negative way, so they can reach out and start to have that more personal conversation. But also certainly you want to be able to analyze that data set to make sure we're doing the right things. So this is what happens. All those responses then get captured into the check-in app responses inside of a crisis hub. What we have over here is any of those check-ins that happen, we can go and see, and we can start to analyze the data. So we can see how many responses we've had, how many are distinct, how long between check-ins this has actually happened, a number of returning visitors, and we can actually go see the average graph of how my team is responding. And if there's a negative response over there, for example, I can have a pop-up I'm not going to show you now, and I can actually then action on that pop-up and do something as a people and culture person. Also, what happens inside of the posts over here, any of the check-ins that I need to have a look at, specifically as a people and culture person, will immediately appear in that Teams feed to say, hey, Piers has checked in. We think you might need to help this one because he's answered one of those questions in a particularly negative way. Have a look at that check-in data and reach out to that person to help them. So again, a simple example of the type of application you could build quite quickly and rapidly in response to a changing condition. So that was that application. The next one I wanted to show you is a desk booking app. One of the other things that could be quite useful is you have to quickly get a desk booking app in place, because now you have to manage how many people are coming into work and not coming into work. Again, one of these types of processes you may want to modify. So if you go to our desk booking app over here, what we'll notice over here, really simple application. And what this allows me to do is go ahead and book a desk. So I click on the book a desk. Says to me, which office do you particularly want to be in? And I could, for example, say, well, I want to go in the Queensland and I want to go on Thursday. And it gives me a list of all available hot desks. And I can say, well, that's the one I want to book. And in 3 clicks, I've gone ahead and I've booked my desk. I also have the ability to have maps, for example. So I can have an actual map displayed in the application so I can understand which desks are available and when those desks are selectable by me. And really what that application, again, is doing behind the scenes is storing that data and obviously managing out a particular business process for me, being able to spin that up, that solution quite quickly. So that's all wonderful. What does the editor look like for this? So how do I build one of these things? So let me give you a quick little view on that desk booking application, for example, just so I can give you a bit of a tour of what the Power Apps or the user interface editor tool looks like and how that sort of fits together in this example. So it's just opening the editor view for me. And one of the screens I'm going to show over here is the My Booking screen. So that was the screen I was just on while I was doing a booking. And you can see that's been modeled out over here. And people talk about low code. What does low code really mean? What it means is not actually code behind this, because what you'll notice over here is I've got my designer interface. I've got my screen navigation controls over here. I've got a list of all the data sources, so where my application could be getting data from. In this case, I'm getting data from a SharePoint list when I'm managing my list of desks over here, for example. And I have the ability, obviously, to navigate those screens. I can also go and insert new controls if I wanted to do specific tasks. So one of the things I may want to do is I may want to put a new control in here, for example. So I might decide that I want to insert a new icon that does something. So I'm going to go add an add icon, and I can go put that add icon over there, and then obviously have that icon initiate some specific action for me. When we talk about low code, an example of low code may be over here. Very simple bit of code over here that basically says, hey, change the color of this item based on whether or not it's been booked. So really simple kind of Excel type formulas that you're going to be typing in order to action and do things. This is directly bound to the data set while I'm working. So right now it's actually showing the data that's live in that list. So I can actually start to work with the application and with the data and make sure the two pieces of the application work together. If I've finished making all my changes, all I have to do is go save and then publish that application, and it then becomes an available application. I can then go ahead and share that out with other people in my environment, and they can then start to consume and to work with that particular application. So that's, again, another example of the type of application you may want to build. And this is an example of just giving you a bit of a feel of what that user interface looks like when you're building those applications. Again, you typically start with a data source, say your application is going to use that data source, and then you start to knock out the screens that allow you to edit the data or capture the data, and obviously have things like formatting rules in order to modify what that application may specifically look like. Now, really, the last solution or demo I wanted to give you is quite a long demo. I wanted to give an example of a sort of an end-to-end business process. So the first one we looked at was the portals, or the citizen portal. What about some internal processes that may be end-to-end? So a very common one is this concept of an expense claim. The reason I do it is everyone has seen expense claims in the past, and they probably have some understanding. So let's have a look at what an expense claim solution may look like inside of a Power App. So over here, I have a SharePoint list where I happen to be managing any processed expense claims or unprocessed expense claims. And I can see in this list, I've got the title, the category, how much it was, the status, if it's been approved or just submitted, who claimed it, what cost center, who the approver is, and what date that expense specifically happened is. I also have attachments, so any attachments that were captured as part of that expense process. So this is really where the data is being managed in this particular case. So if I go ahead now and I want to go and create a new expense claim, I'm just going to open up that quick expense claim application. And what we can see is I've got all these different expense claims over here. I can click on any one of those expense claims that's been processed, and I can see the information about the expense claim over there, and I can see this one has been approved. I can go ahead, for example, and look for one of the Ubers because I've actually attached a receipt over there, and you'll actually see the receipt that was attached as part of that process in the expense claim over there. But one of the things I'm going to want to do then is obviously go ahead and create myself a new expense claim. So when I click the plus button over there, that's giving me the opportunity to create a new expense claim. Now, there's a couple of ways you could do this. Typically, I could type in all the data, or one of the things I can do is use some of those AI smarts that the Power Platform gives me. So what I'm going to do over here is use a thing called the forms processor, which is one of those AI models that allows it to automatically look at a form and analyze the data. So I'm going to go ahead and load up an expense claim. I'll use this Uber receipt from the 8th of November and drop that into the application. When I drop that into the application, what's happening behind the scenes now, it's taking that image, it's firing it off to the forms processor, which is a model that I've trained in receipts. It's now going to have a look at the receipt, and what it's going to do is go find the fields that are relevant to the form I'm working on. And with a level degree of accuracy, which I'll zoom in on later, it's gone and picked up that this is an Uber receipt for $100.40. So it's automatically captured that information for me. What I just need to do is decide the category I want to submit under. In this case, I'm going to say travel, and I need to choose the cost center that I want to link it to. And let's say in this case, this is the operations cost center. Now that I've captured the data, I just click on my tick button over there. And what's going to happen is that expense is now going to be submitted, awaiting some kind of approval. So if I go back to my expense management list over here and I just refresh it, what we're going to notice right at the end of the list, we should see that one that I've just submitted. Let me just scroll down. The one that I've just submitted for $100.04. Currently, it's not approved. It hasn't been completed the claim process. I'm waiting for that to go through the next step. So what is the next step? So the next thing that happens over here is this is going to go kick off a Power Virtual Agent flow. And what that, a Power Automate workflow. And what that's going to do is set off an approval process. So let's go have a look at what that flow looks like. So if I just refresh this over here, you'll see that that is currently running, is currently waiting to be approved. I'm just going to open that in edit mode so you can have a look at what that automatic flow is actually doing. So what it does is as soon as I add that expense claim, it goes and saves that item to the SharePoint list. This flow triggers off as soon as a new item is created. And the very first thing it's going to do is going to say, depending on who created it, I want to go to Active Directory and I want to find out who that person's manager is. And I want to set that as a manager. And then I want to start an approval process that goes and sends an email to that manager and asks them to please approve that expense claim. When they finish the approval, if it's successful, what I want to do over there is I want to update the status to say it's been approved. And I want to go obviously email the person who lodged that expense claim that the expense has been approved. So fairly simple business process. Again, just modeled out over there, showing you a bit of the integration. This really simple one, getting the manager from Active Directory. This one here, writing data into SharePoint, and this pre-built approval process that I can just populate with my specific instance of that approval. So where does that approval go? So what we should see over here, if we open up, this is the approver's email box. His name is Oaken. Oaken is my manager. I can see over there, I've got a new workflow that says I need to be approved. It says, hey, by the way, Piers Matthews has submitted this expense claim on the 3rd of December. You need to approve that expense claim. So what I may want to do is click on the link over there, just so I can have a look at that data and see if I'm happy with what he has submitted. I can see all the information. I can even go ahead and open the attachment and review to say, yep, I'm happy with that. I can then go ahead and approve. And when I approve this, you'll notice it's an interactive style environment. With this card, I can actually go and put comments directly in my mailbox, and I can say valid expense claim. In this particular case is my comment, and I can go ahead and click submit. As soon as I click submit, what that's going to do is go and update that Power Automate workflow that I had running. So if I go ahead and I open that, we should see it'll come through now. It's all been successful. It has been approved, and it's gone ahead and it's gone and sent an email out to Piers Matthews to say, hey, by the way, your expense has been approved, and it's obviously updated the status in the SharePoint list to say that item has been approved. So if I go ahead and I refresh this quickly over here, what we should notice is right at the end over there, that expense claim has been approved and run through the entire process end to end. So now that we've seen that, one of the things you might want to do is, well, what about managers? They surely want to be able to see how many expense claims have been created, how many have been approved. How can we go ahead and do that? So inside of my quick expense claim form managers, I have enabled a specific button called reporting. If I go ahead and I click on that information over there, we'll notice I'm pulling through reporting information about all the expense claims that have been created. Now, the interesting thing is these are Power BI dashboards that I've created. I create and define those Power BI dashboards inside of Power BI. And then all I say, this is Power BI. All I say when I create that application is, hey, I want to embed those dashboards for viewing by the person who uses this application. And immediately I can go and see information about how much amount has been submitted on which specific dates. And then I can also have a split by those dollars by a specific cost center. So a very nice sort of way to actually go and merge and have that data visualization piece, as I said, as part of your entire business process being rendered out through that solution. So one of the things we like to talk about then is that AI bit. So how did we do that forms recognition? How does it all work? So behind the scenes, what we have over there is this idea of the AI builder. And what we can notice over here is this is my receipt processor model that I use. So how did I build that receipt recognition? Well, it was actually quite simple. What I had to do over here is I had to say, hey, I actually want to go ahead and train a model to go find specific fields. And the way that we do that is when we create this model, we go and upload example images. So in this case, I uploaded 10 images of Uber receipts. I then told the model, go find data. It goes away and finds fields. And then it says to me, which fields do you want to use? And I pulled out total supply, year, day, month of the data that it found. And that becomes fields and I can then use in anything in the Power Platform. So I can go and create a workflow that goes and uses that data to do something, or as I did in my case, I can create a Power App that then goes and uses that model that I've then created. Obviously, as a quick test, just to show you how that works, I can upload, again, one of those images from my device. Again, what it's doing behind the scenes now is taking that Uber receipt, running against the pre-trained model and identifying all the fields. So I can see that it's picked up supply at a 99% confidence. It's gone and picked up the amount, and it's gone and from the date over there, picked up month, day, and years, obviously be able to model out those specific values for me, so I can then use that for my Uber receipt. And really, that's how that solution was put together. So really nice little way to do that. Now, there are many other models or AI models that we have available to us directly embedded in the Power Platform. And by the way, all of these are built on the back of Azure Cognitive Services. So as Microsoft releases more and more cognitive services capabilities, we see more of these kind of pre-built AI models available to us that we can drag and drop them into our Power Platform solutions. So I've got a whole set over here. So category classification, entity extraction, forms processing is the one I showed you. Object detection, great if you're taking a photo of something and you want to identify a specific item in the photo, you can do that type of thing as well. Language detection is great. So when you get text, figure out what language it is automatically from that as well. And one of the ones I like to always show is this idea of sentiment analysis. It's quite good in a public sector scenario to understand, based on comments that are provided, is someone positive or negative about a service that you may have used. So have a quick give you a demo of what sentiment analysis may look like. I can put any text over here and check to see the sentiments. So I can say, this is a great demo, hopefully. And I can run that through the sentiment analysis engine. And what it's going to come back with me is whether or not this is a positive or negative statement. So overwhelmingly, this is a positive statement. But what if I try to trick it and said, well, what about a mixed statement? But I am not happy today. I'm being quite specific here, but you get the idea. So what this is going to do now is going to go analyze both of those statements, and it's going to come up and say, actually, this is a mixed statement. The person has mixed feelings, but it's smart enough to know which of those is positive and which of those is negative. So really useful to build this into your applications by way of example, to gather sentiment as data is being captured on forms and processes that you may choose to enable inside of that Power Platform. So that's how the Power Platform fits together. So what I've given you a quick demo there is that expense claim concept. I want to extend that scenario a little bit more for you quickly and say, what if somebody wanted to submit an expense claim, but they didn't want to do it in a form? What if we wanted to give them the ability to do it on our website in a bot or in Teams in a bot? Well, luckily enough for us, we have a component called Power Virtual Agents, and this is where that bot capability is enabled. So inside of Power Virtual Agents over here, what I can go ahead and do is interact with my bot and see if I can get it to create an expense claim instead of through a form, but through text. This is how my virtual agents. I can help you with a whole bunch of stuff. What would you like help with today? And I'm going to say expense claim If I could spell, it would help. Ah, smart enough, figured out even though I spelled expense claim incorrectly, it knows exactly what I'm trying to do, which is awesome. So what I want, either list my existing expenses or make a claim. So I'm going to go ahead and make a claim. Now I've currently got this in the editor view or the canvas view. So you can see what it does is the way the Power Virtual Agent works is I actually just model out my entire conversation over here, and then I'm able to test and work through what that flow is. So provide a short description of my expense claim, lunch with Jimmy. How much was lunch? $500. We went to a really expensive restaurant. What date? Let's say 2 days ago. Let's see if it's clever enough to work out what that date is. I'm just going to show you the variables over here so you can see. I haven't actually linked the variables up, but it actually works out that 2 days ago is 2 days ago. Which category? In this case, I'm going to go for entertainment. Cost center, let's say it was related to operations. And this is the expense claim. So really what this model is doing behind the scenes is going ahead and it's going to go create that expense claim. And I go ahead and I click yes, and then it'll go and create that expense claim. So the question is, what did it do behind the scenes? You notice over here in this model, this is now the completed workflow that I've worked through in that conversation flow. What it's gone ahead and done is it goes and runs an action. So what it does is all that data I've collected, it's very clever. What I do over here is I call a Power Automate flow. So that's that workflow and say, here's this data, go submit it. All this does is goes and writes it into that exact same SharePoint list so that the same approval process can kick off and run. Did that answer your question? Yes. Rate your experience. I'm going to say it was good. Thank you. Can I help with anything else? And I'm going to say no, thanks, just to complete the conversation with my bot over there. If I went back to that expense list and I refreshed it, what I should see at the end of that expense list is that I have that expense claim now been added. There it is, lunch with Jimmy. It's submitted. And what we should obviously see is that the relevant workflow has started for that one as well in the back end over here. And there it's running. That's the one I've just started over there. So that gives you an idea of how I can use the Power Platform quite innovatively, even using a Power Virtual Agent to run and to automate the business process for myself over there. So those are the demos that I hopefully wanted to get across, and hopefully I've got across some of the value of the platform. So really then just to summarize this now for you, what did we see today? Well, the first thing we saw was a citizen portal. That citizen portal was set up to show you how we can use the Power Platform to enable a public-facing portal with Power App forms that citizens or public people can submit, and then we can run a business process. The back end of that, we had a modal application running on the Common Data Service where my call center workers or my service workers could receive that request and do the relevant business process that they need to kick off. In this case, it was an approval and the scheduling of a meeting with that particular person. I then showed you the example of quick mobile applications to responding to scenarios. So I showed you the idea of a check-in application responding to COVID and a desk booking application that would very nicely render out to mobile devices distributed to my workforce. And the last thing was a concept of an end-to-end scenario for a common internal process you may have, such as an expense claim, where we showed you how we could transform a standard paper-based expense claim or Excel expense claim process and really do something a bit smarter with that, have it on a form, have some AI to automatically recognize the data in the form, and then also provide you a different channel using a conversational user interface of a bot interacting with you on that process. So let's have a quick roundup of the capabilities. So first capability that we saw in Power Platform, Dataverse. This is that common data model for the whole of the Power Platform that allows us to model data centrally and build many different applications on top of it. It really is the basis of the Dynamics 365 platform, where I can have those first-party apps being customer service, sales, and marketing. Public sector, definitely customer service. It's where my Power Portal is built on top of, and allows me to build those unique solutions on top of that data model. We saw Power Apps. So we saw 3 types of Power Apps. We saw the model-driven application, fantastic solution, allows us to model the data and very quickly build an application on top of that data where the application represents that data model directly. And that's what we saw in the Citizen Portal backend solution that we developed. We saw some Canvas applications. So if you remember that expense claim application, that was a good example of a Canvas application, and the check-in application. And what they allow us to do is to really build that application from scratch and then choose which data. So we're not building it directly off the data model, choose which data we want to put in, which gives us very fine-grained control of what the user interface looks like. We also saw Power Apps portals being the capability that gives us external facing portal capability for our citizens to interact with. We saw Power Automate, this guy that helps us do that human-to-human approval workflow, but also integration with systems. And we have up to 300 and even growing connectors now to connect to the whole of the Microsoft Cloud and a whole host of other SaaS providers online, as well as even on-premise connectivity with data gateways. You can connect, for example, to SAP on-premise if that was one of the platforms you were running in your environment. Lastly, we spoke about Power Virtual Agents. So Power Virtual Agents being the ability to have a very no-code or low-code environment to model up a conversation flow, where typically your domain experts would be doing that and build out that conversation in order to interact or to kick off with a business process. We spoke about AI services, a very mature offering that Microsoft has in cognitive services. Those pre-built AI utilities are now available to us in the Power Platform, allowing us to do interesting things like sentiment analysis and forms, automatic form recognition. One of the things I didn't get to touch on today, but certainly a strong thing to touch about, is RPA. Inside of the Power Platform, we have a full RPA capability as well. So if we can't interact with some legacy system with one of the pre-built connectors, we have robotic process automation, which is really, from a Microsoft perspective, this capability that allows us to interact with legacy systems, be they on web or whether it be thick client, even down to green screen, the ability to record screen interactions and interact with them as part of an automatic flow, so we can push data in and get data out. Extending that RPA capability, we obviously have all that AI capability, all that flow capability, all that BPM capability inside of Flow. So it really starts to become quite an exciting solution when you try and modernize some of our legacy solutions that we may have in our environments. How do you go about getting the Power Platform? Well, there's really 3 ways to get the Power Platform. Today, if you have Office 365, sort of E3 and above, you already have the basic version of the Power Platform. You have the ability to create Canvas Power Apps. You have the ability to share and store data inside of the 365 environment, typically in things like SharePoint lists, Microsoft lists, and Teams. You have that already today, and you can start working with that. There were some limitations on that sort of free version that comes with 365, so you don't have the wide array of connectors and you don't have the common data service. Dynamics 365 centric is the other way. This is if you procure the product by buying a Dynamics 365 solution, being sales, services, and marketing. Typically in public sector, it's customer service or the service module or field service module. You get access to the Power Platform through that channel. And lastly, standalone. You could choose to say, I want to license my entire environment in a per app model, or licenses for all my users per user across those different platforms that are available to you, and just build out those solutions. So really 3 ways, and we're happy to work with Microsoft and yourself to help work out the best licensing model for the types of solutions you go for. And very often, by the way, we find that the best first is actually a mixed model depending on the solutions you're trying to enable in the environment. And that is a very quick, and sorry for the rush over there, I really wanted to make sure we got all the demo, but a really quick whirlwind tour of what we have in the Power Platform. Molly, I don't know if there's any questions that have been posted through while I've been rambling on.
Yep. It says, thanks, great demo. How does the licensing work for public access to the app, i.e. if we create a public-facing Power App?
Yeah, great question. So there's a 170-page licensing guide, which I can distill for you one-on-one, no doubt, very easy to do, and we can work through that. But the basic model that works at is very simple. For that, you have to license the common data service. So you have to have common data service and license it. And there's a license for the portal app, the Power Apps portal, which has a base licensing model, which is great for almost all scenarios. And then it's got a per view model, so per number of access to the solution that we can work through with you on that. But overall, it's a very cost-effective model, having the Power Apps portals directly on top of common data service, and then your workflows running off that.
Great, thanks, Piers. I think that's all from the questions.
Sure.
So happy to wrap that up if you are.
Yeah, so I don't know, James and Sean, if you want to do a bit of a wrap up, and then I can talk a bit about next steps for the guys.
Absolutely. Thanks a lot, Piers. That was a great session. Hopefully everyone enjoyed the demos, and it's just given you a couple of examples for how you can start to streamline some of those workflows, digitalize forms. I think Piers has done a great job with the demo as always. We do have a number of options. There are some funding options available if you want to kick off, for example, maybe an app in a day workshop to sort of understand how we can solve one of your challenges. And so we'll be following up with you afterwards. I'll hand back over to Piers in terms of some of those options available for app in a day.
Sure. Awesome. Yep. So really the next steps, hopefully, if you think about the Power Platform, the top green tick, hopefully you've got a good idea of what the Power Platform now has to offer. There are some other things that you need to go through. So you need to firstly understand which licenses are best fits or best fit for your particular scenarios, and we'll work through you and with Microsoft to get that right. One of the things is once you start to adopt this platform, start to consider setting up a center of excellence, because as you can see, it's a low-code platform. Not only you want your pro developers, your IT team, you do want to encourage in really controlled environment, which you can do, by the way, the ability for your end users to start or power users to start working with the environment. And lastly, design your approach of how you're going to roll the platform out. In terms of next steps, as James has said, we have a free app design in a day workshop where myself or one of my colleagues will spend 4 hours with you working through an idea that you have and modeling out the components you would use. We'll deliver an architecture document to you as a result of that then you can choose to adopt and implement yourself. Or as James says, through funding we can apply for with Microsoft. And from Microsoft, maybe we can actually build that solution for you to get your first one up and running. We have an essential practices video, so on our YouTube channel, and Molly will send an email out to all of you after this. We've got some videos. The essential practices tells you about really all the things you need to think about when adopting this. We have an ebook which summarizes a bunch of the licensing questions you may have, as well as concepts about how you can adopt it. And lastly, consider setting up and creating a trial environment and actually just getting your hands dirty and playing with the platform as IT end users, just to get familiar with what it can do for you. Don't be scared to dive in and start just working and getting a bit of a feel. We can certainly help you manage it in a very well-governed way if you so choose. And that is it from us.
Thanks everyone for joining. Thanks Piers, Sean and James. Everyone just keep an eye out in your inboxes. We will be sending out the recording and assets this afternoon. And thanks again for joining.
Thanks, team.
Thanks. See you next time.
Thank you, everyone.
Thanks, Piers.